Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Express. I'm Neena Gopal. This is the New Indian Express's weekly interaction with experts, where we analyze the impact of developments in our backyard, on our neighborhood, on India. Do click on the New Indian Express and website and tweet and follow Global Express. So, as Israel's defense forces go in for the kill against Hamas strongholds in Gaza after its brazen attack last Saturday, there are multiple issues that simply jump out at you. How can we characterize the brutal Hamas attack? Is it Harakiri or is it genius? Will it force an end to the Israeli-Palestinian stalemate? Or is it the end of the road for the Palestinian state altogether? Talking us through the issue today is former Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed, who served as India's top diplomat in the Middle East, twice in Riyadh as India's ambassador there, and in the Emirates, Oman, Yemen. He's also the author of the definitive book on the Middle East, West Asia at War. Welcome, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed.
Thank you very much.
We are also looking forward to having with us Nader Alghoul, a political journalist with over 20 years' experience. He's a columnist and a political analyst and teaches in Chicago's Illinois University. Thank you for coming on Global Express. Hopefully, we will also be joined by Ambassador Daniel Taub, a former Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom. He's now Director for Strategy and Planning at Yad and Hanadev Rothschild Foundation in Jerusalem. He was a negotiator in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process and a member of the team that also negotiated with Syria. Thank you, Ambassador, for coming on the show. So let's start with you, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed. Israel's top priority right now is decimating Hamas and its strongholds and freeing the 150 hostages, who include this peace activist, Vivian Silva, and so on. But now we hear that 13 hostages have died already in the airstrikes, and Hamas, of course, has denied that and said that's not true. What do you believe led Hamas leader Mohammed Deif to undertake such a operation against the Israeli settlements? I mean, he's outwitted Israeli intelligence. He's sent in fighters on hang gliders, on foot, brought down the 20-foot high barricades, disabled the monitors. Do you think that this was, whether Mohammed Deif had the strategic and military wherewithal to pull off something like this, or did he do it with the help of, Iran or Syria or, what is the general consensus on this, Ambassador Talmiz?
There is no evidence so far that the Hamas attacks have been planned by some other role player. There was some writing in the American media suggesting that Iran was the mastermind behind this entire event. That has been denied both by Israeli sources as well as by the Secretary of State, Blinken, who have pointed out that we have no evidence. I think the concern is, as of now, they would like to confine the conflict to within the Gaza area and not broaden it and bring in other elements into this. Also, as you know, mentioning Iran is a kind of automatic, a knee-jerk reaction. Anything that goes wrong in the region, Iran is responsible. Unless you bring in Iran, you are not content.
You've called it the easy
Iran is a full-fledged industry in the United States and in Israel. Neither of them has attempted to engage Iran seriously. Even when you have had agreements with Iran in the past, the Americans have reneged on them. Even as recently as the prisoner swap arrangement and $6 billion that were to be passed on to the Iranians, now the Americans have told Qatar not to send anything.
That's
because
right.
Donald Trump started blaming Biden for supporting Iran at this period. So there is a certain domestic element as far as US reactions are concerned. Your other question as to why this happened.
Yeah.
This is not the first attempt by the Palestinians to attack the Israelis. They are living under occupation. And as you know, Gaza itself has been described as the world's largest open air prison. There are 2.3 million people living in 360 square kilometers. You also have about 45 to 50% unemployment, 75% unemployment among young people. They are one of the world's most horrible existence that you find that is there in that area. They are besieged continuously by the Israelis. And if they get little dollops of electricity, it is gifted to them. It is like a great charity being done by the Israelis. So, in this scenario, a sense of frustration, a sense of helplessness, a sense of anger is all but natural. Also, what has happened in recent times, ever since Netanyahu formed his government in December 2022, you have had a significant increase in the atrocities by the Israelis against the Palestinians.
But
You have,
this
for
was not in
example,
Gaza. This was not in Gaza. It
no,
was in the
not in
occupied
Gaza,
West Bank.
because there are no settlers in Gaza.
So it's the
These
occupied West
settlers,
Bank.
what they were under the impression, the Israelis were under the impression that we've got Gaza under control. It is
That's
under
it.
siege.
That's right.
We have got where we have got Gaza where we wanted. They deliberately expanded the space for confrontation to the West Bank. And already, just in this year alone, so far, 248 Palestinians have been killed by the settlers. The settlers operate with the full support of the security forces. More troubling for the people has been the deliberate desecration at the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
That's right.
You have had these zealots passing through the mosque regularly, carrying out prayers, and the most recent one was on 5th October. So, yes, there is a very long history of deliberate and consistent provocation by the Israeli side under the auspices of the Netanyahu government. I think that
But Ambassador, wasn't it more recent? I mean, throughout the years, yes, but this is the first time that you've had a Jewish minister walking through the area where the Muslims worship at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I mean, this Itamar Ben Gavir and the other man, I can't remember what his name is, the other minister. Yeah, Smotrich. So both of them actually entered an area where I know that you cannot enter if you're a non-Muslim.
You see, there is a complicated situation there. Israeli right wing, Israeli zealots claim that entire space, including the mosque, as their own.
Oh, I
and
see.
have visions of the
But it's
rebuilding of
monitored.
the third temple,
But
which will effectively.
isn't it monitored by Jordan? Isn't it managed by
Yeah,
Jordan?
it is only the prayers, etc., are managed. The security is provided by Israel.
That's right.
Israel allows tourists to appear, but the prayers, the religious part of that complex, is exclusively confined to Muslims. What these people have started doing is to provoke the people who are there and to deliberately claim that the sanctity of that space reserved for Muslims is now no longer that is no longer acceptable to them. On
So do you
5th
think that was a
October,
spark? That was a
sorry,
spark.
this is what happened. On 5th October, 350 worshippers were attacked by the security personnel
I saw that.
and by their zealots. I'm not, that may have sparked, we don't know. If you remember, in the year 2000, Ariel Sharon had also passed through the Al-Aqsa Mosque
Right.
and had incited the second Intifada, which had gone on for a few years, and lots of people were killed in that. So there is a pattern of provocation and retaliation, and that is inherent in the situation because Israel will not address the concerns of the Palestinian people. Israel is on record in Oslo 1 and Oslo 2 that there will be negotiations on final status, which would lead to a sovereign and viable Palestinian state.
But
Now,
nothing has happened.
those discussions seriously have never taken place. And from year 2000, we know till now, there is not even an attempt to believe that there is any serious commitment in that regard. More and more, we have seen that the religious zealots and the messianic elements have attempted to become more significant in influencing Israeli politics. In that regard, the messianic view of this situation is that all of the land, including the occupied territories, is sacred land. It is
Because it's
land given to
biblical.
by God as a gift to the Jewish people. It is the
Mm.
promised land. And therefore, in this sacred land, no non-Jew can flourish. What has been finally allowed is that non-Jews can flourish. They cannot flourish, they can live, but they live under very inhuman conditions. The hope of these zealots is that someday they will just disappear. Someday they will go away. And to expedite their departure, you carry out periodically these acts of violence.
But may
So,
may I also say that in Ramallah and in the occupied West Bank, despite the pressure from, I mean, of course, there have been confrontations in recent months, in the last 2 years, but until when I went there in 2018, it wasn't as confrontational. You know, the kind of settlement building that has happened in the last 2.5 years has been really stepped up. So do you think it's because, they were sort of precluding, I think the Israeli government, Netanyahu's government was precluding any possibility of, any kind of arrangement that would have given the Palestinians, some kind of identity or a place? Because the Gaza, I mean, if you look at Gaza, you can see that it's like a box. Like they allow 20,000 people to enter on passes, work passes every day to come and work in Israel. I mean, 20,000 got jobs, but 2.5 million don't, 2.3 million don't, as you've written also on in your recent piece. So, I mean, what are they trying to say that then the occupied West Bank is a no-go area for Palestinians, or they live as non-people? Gaza is
I
not
want to
possible.
clarify to you the Oslo Accord and the Palestine Authority that emerged from the Oslo
Yes.
Accord.
Yeah.
This was only of a temporary character. It was
Oh.
supposed to be there in place for about 3 years. There was a small security force also provided to the Palestinians. The idea was that this would lead to final status negotiations, which would lead to a sovereign and viable Palestinian state. What has happened instead, that during this period, particularly in the last 25 and to 30 years, the Israelis have systematically expanded their own settlements. A
That's right.
few months ago, a year or so ago, there were 500,000 settlers. In 2020, we were told there are 500,000 settlers. Now there are 700,000 settlers, and the new government wants to make it 1 million. So there is very obviously bad faith exhibited right there. There is no interest
Absolutely.
whatsoever on the Israeli side to pursue this project for a sovereign and viable state. In fact, every action of theirs makes such a state impossible. So that is the concern, and that is why you do it. And also, something that for which Netanyahu deserves blame, he has
Hmm.
systematically undermined the Palestine Authority and its standing by discrediting the entire project of the Palestine Authority, so that today it is a significantly diminished organization.
It is.
The reason why Hamas was able to expand itself and establish its authority in Gaza was entirely due to the fact that the Palestine Authority carried no conviction with the Palestinian people.
But also, the supporters of Hamas are not in as huge numbers as as everyone thinks they are in the Gaza. In Gaza, a lot of people say that they live under the boot of a gun, whether it is Israeli or whether
Well,
it is
I'm not
Hamas.
sure because there has been no election from
There was an
2007
election. That's right, in
when Mahmoud
2007.
Abbas's term ended. And the reason there has been no election, to the best of my knowledge, is because of the palpable fear, both in the mind of the Palestine Authority's present leaders and of the Israelis and the Americans, that Hamas will win.
That's right.
So to simply demonize them without any proof that these are not that the people of Israel, that the people of Gaza are living under a jackboot, okay, if they are, tested and discredit them at the polls. So, but that is not happening. On the other hand, my own view is exactly the opposite, and that is that
Mhm.
Hamas's appeal is increasing in the West Bank. That is the great concern. That we need
Yeah,
to,
it
that's
is. It
Fatah.
is.
today
Yeah.
it's a shadow of its former self, and the blame for this lies at the hand. I mean, it lies on the shoulders of the Israeli government, particularly Prime Minister Netanyahu.
But you wouldn't blame the fact that Mahmoud Abbas has not been able to sort of put together enough of a sort of opposition against Netanyahu's games. I mean, I know that the Palestinians are being hounded in the West Bank also, but shouldn't there be a greater voice? I mean, for the last 10 years, there's been absolute silence. Is it also because partly because I think the Arab countries in the region, the ones that supported Palestine so vigorously in the past, they've also shifted. They're also sort of,
Well, you have asked many questions, and I will need to respond to them. Mahmoud Abbas is today 84 years old.
yeah.
His term ended more than a decade ago.
Mm.
He is believed to be illegally the president of the Palestine Authority. He
Mm.
did not allow his term to be extended for fear that he will be defeated, or that his supporters will be defeated. So already at the heart of the Palestine Authority project, you have a sense of failure at the heart
Yeah.
of the authority. Since then, this remains more and more discredited. You find that they are now hanging on to authority and power, and are viewed as, I don't know whether it's right or wrong, they are viewed as a thoroughly corrupt organization. And that
Yeah, that's
this
being
is an
said, yes.
organization that would more happily work with the Israeli government, the occupation forces, rather than uphold the interests of the Palestinian people.
Mm.
Therefore, the people are today overwhelmingly disenchanted as far as their own leaders in the West Bank are concerned. Are they now equally happy with the Hamas? We don't know. Hamas, as of now, appears to me to be the most effective resistance organization as far as the Palestinians are concerned. The second question you have put to me is about the Arab states. There
Yeah.
are two facets here. The Arab states have not been playing a major role in
Mm.
upholding the Palestinian aspirations on the ground. Their support has been at a distance. As far as the Palestinian struggle is concerned, from 1967 till today, it is largely a Palestinian effort, not an Arab effort. So that is the
Yes.
first point. However, overwhelmingly, Arab opinion, popular opinion, is very supportive of the Palestinian cause and Palestinian aspirations.
That's right.
In many countries, this support for Palestinian aspirations is there is a divide between the popular opinion and the leaders. Quite a few leaders may like to normalize relations with the Israelis
Why is
without
that?
achieving any concession for the Palestinians. But
Why
I
do
would
they
say
want
to
to?
you
Why
with
do they want to
complete
normalize?
emphasis that this particular uprising, this
Yeah.
particular conflict has ended that attempt at normalization without addressing the Palestinian cause.
No, but why is it that the Arab countries wanted to normalize relations with Israel and sort of shove the Palestinian issue under the carpet? I mean, not even give them the chance to have a state as was the plan.
In,
What
each
was
country
responsible?
takes its decision on the basis of its own interests. And in several countries in the Arab world, the interests of the ruling dynasty or the ruler personally are equated with the national interest. And
I
very
believe
often,
Egypt. You've said yourself that Egypt was has huge suspicions of Hamas itself because of its connections to the Muslim Brotherhood. That is one. But Qatar has mediated several times. Every time Israel and Hamas have been shooting at each other, it's Qatar that has stepped in more and more.
say, Qatar has been affiliated with Islamism or with the Brotherhood for some time, and therefore
Hmm.
it is a natural role player in the region. Also, do recall till now, most of the conflicts in the region have been relatively low key since
Yeah,
the Intifada of year 2000. This is something quite different. This is a hammer blow at the
yeah.
Israeli political and military order. It is not going to be easy for the Israelis to just call for a truce and move on. This is what has happened is this hammer blow at the Israelis discredits the government. And there is a great fear that the government itself will be under pressure from popular opinion within Israel. So there is now a desperate attempt by killing the largest number of Palestinians possible. There is a desperate attempt by the Israelis to protect themselves from their own popular ire. I believe that. I believe that somehow you can kill a large number of Palestinians and hopefully a few leaders and tell the Israelis you have been avenged. They want to save themselves from the discredit that is their due.
So I just want to bring in, the very overly, presence of the American administration. You have Anthony Blinken flying in. You have Lloyd Austin flying in. What exactly does America, plan to achieve with this? With this, are they trying? Are they appealing to a domestic audience where they're trying to prove that the Republicans are not right about how much money they were planning to release to Iran, but what exactly are they getting at? I mean, they're reaching out to Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Turkey. What is going on?
But I think that the American administration is trying to show the support for the state of Israel, unconditional support for the state of Israel. They from the first day they decided to give Israel $8 billion in military aid. Anthony Blinken is in the region, as you said, and defense Secretary of Defense in the region also, and also the statement of the President Biden after the conflict was as if he's speaking for Israel, he's not speaking for the United States. So I think that it's part of the unconditional support again for the state of Israel and the occupation power in Palestine. But what trying to gain, I think that in a way, Americans are involved in Israeli politics, even if they don't say that they are involved. What's happening with the judicial reform in Israel, part of it that was against the interests of the United States, against the interest of most Zionists, because if you want to save Israel from itself, you have to keep the two-state solution alive. So I think by involving in this conflict, when what happened in Gaza, they are trying in a way. That's my perspective on the issue. Netanyahu is done after, as your guest Talmiz just spoke about what's happening in Gaza. I think Netanyahu, they're trying to end Netanyahu politically, and after what happened in Gaza, I think Netanyahu politically is done. Now they have emergency cabinet, but after all this happened ends, I think Netanyahu no more will be in the political picture of Israel.
So he'll be toast, and they'll bring in Benny Gantz.
Maybe. I think Gantz joined the cabinet, so I think he is also like not the real candidate. But I think Lapid might be the guy who's United States is looking for.
But you also see, I mean, there's a visit that they're talking about that Blinken could make with, to the occupied West Bank, that he could go and meet Mahmoud Abbas. Is that a possibility? I mean, in the sense, do you think that
he already met Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, in Amman in Jordan? So
that's quite interesting. I think that's quite an interesting development. The fact that he met him, and I mean, is there any possibility at all that there could be some kind of an arrangement by which I mean, the Israelis destroy Hamas? But then reach out to a more moderate figure. Is that something that you see happening, or is that my imagination?
I think, as I said, they're trying. The American trying to save the two-state solution. It's from the Israeli interest, and they're not destroying Hamas in Gaza. They're destroying the whole people in Gaza. They ask for 1.1 million people to evacuate and expelled from their homes and leave their homes and go to the southern part of Gaza Strip. So I think it's in part they're trying to destroy Hamas militant.
Could you explain that to us? What do they mean by the southern part? Isn't the southern part the entrance to the Rafah crossing?
Egypt.
Is that where they want?
Exactly.
So they want to move 1.1 million people into Rafah, into the Sinai.
Exactly. They're trying to push the people to go there. But according to the reports I look into before I join you, not all people are willing to leave their homes and go to the southern part, because where they will go in the southern part, they don't have family, maybe they don't have place to go. And even if they have, like, how many people, like the people in Rafah and Khan Yunis in the southern part of Gaza Strip, are willing to welcome people in that region? Like, okay, you have a home, you can have 10, 20 people, but Gaza is the most populated piece of land
in the world.
So that's really unacceptable. And also beside that the northern part of Gaza Strip is the most populated part of Gaza Strip.
So so from what I understand from what you're saying is feeding into all our suspicions that basically Netanyahu has blocked this two-state solution by by sort of restricting Palestinians to the Gaza Strip and giving them a little sort of air to breathe by giving 19,000 Palestinians the permits to work in Gaza in Israel, and the plan basically is to evict or push Gazans into the Sinai. But Egypt, I believe, in the past has said nothing doing because they don't trust this at all. And
it's not of Egypt's interest to accept Palestine, because that's if you want to think about it, like accepting 2 million people into your already high population. Egypt is 110 million people, so that's an extra 2 million people from Gaza Strip, for example. It's not going to be helpful, especially with the economic situation in Egypt and also security situation. But I think they're trying in a way to force the people or try to clean Gaza from Hamas militant, which is like by doing that, they are committing atrocities, genocide in Gaza. They are killing children, women. We are talking about at least 550 kids were killed in Gaza Strip. So that's how bad the situation. Hospital in Gaza are saying that they don't have the ability to receive any more injured or wounded people. People are waiting in the fridge to be buried in Gaza. So it is really bad situation, and it's not about Hamas. And this conflict didn't start on Saturday, October the 7th. It started 75 years ago.
A lot of Palestinians are saying that. A lot of Palestinians have said that over and over in every program that they've come on. But Hamas did take it to another level altogether this time. I mean, in the past, there have been, both the intifadas were very, extremely violent. And yes, in the occupied West Bank, Palestinians have faced the heat. Ramadan worshippers were attacked. So all of that, and even even the Friday of worship today has, they've been blocked from entering anyone who's, below 50 years old. But do you think that this is why did Hamas then take it to that level? Because Hamas was clever enough to know, I think, or someone has fed them the strategy that they now get the attention of the world. That that this two-state solution has been on ice for far too long, and that
I cannot speak for Hamas, but I think that what happened in October 7th is a natural result of what's going on in Palestine. Gaza Strip, for example. Forget about the 75 years of occupation. Like the blockade in Gaza, people in Gaza are blockaded. They don't have, now they cut the water, the electricity, the internet, everything. The infrastructure was destroyed by Israeli occupation. So I think it's, in a way, it's a natural
But the Israelis
result.
also did exit Gaza. 5 years ago.
No. That's they exit
Not
Gaza.
True?
Yes, they are out of Gaza Strip, but they are controlling the Gaza Strip. They're controlling the borders. They're controlling what goes into Gaza Strip and what goes out of Gaza Strip. So they decide. And when the people try, for example, during this conflict this week, they bombarded Rafah crossing point. So that's how Israel control Gaza. So it is Israel left from within the Gaza Strip, but still control Gaza as a whole.
If I can just go back to you, Ambassador Ahmed, I mean, when we see this whole, the humanitarian crisis that is building in Gaza, now they're saying 1.1 million people should move to the south and all of this. I mean, there are hospitals. Do you think India has also sort of, made their position a little, they've qualified it a little bit? Because on the first day, they came out totally and completely with Israel, and on the second day they sort of hedged a bit to say that that Delhi would like a sovereign Palestinian state. Do you think it was more a domestic? I mean, they were appealing to a domestic audience, or is it because India's policy towards Israel, which may have changed after the leaders developed this bond, they now feel that they should, sort of be more in sync with Palestine? I mean, the I2U2
I'm not sure any
agreement.
of that is true. I think that the first remarks made by the Prime Minister were a spontaneous response to what he was told or understood, that there is a massive attack by the Hamas and that several hundred Israelis have been killed. As you know, the party to which he belongs, the group from where he has been nurtured ideologically, have a very strong affiliation with the Zionist movement. It goes back many decades. He personally has built a very strong rapport and camaraderie with Prime Minister Netanyahu. So I think the first remark where he referred to Hamas as a terrorist organization was made in that context.
Oh.
Later on, when Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke to him, the tweet that says is again very interesting. It refers to the conversation. It says that the Indian Prime Minister assured Mr. Netanyahu that the people of India support Israel without offering any shred of evidence in this regard. And finally, did not speak of Hamas as a terrorist organization, but simply spoke about terrorism being bad, which is, I think, an innocuous remark because there's nobody in the world who says, oh, terrorism is good. Then you have the foreign ministry spokesperson who spoke yesterday and who attempted to bring all of this confusion into some semblance of order. Because there had been opinion emerged immediately. We started saying that India has given up on the two-state solution and is totally in support of Israel. And this was an absurd conclusion to have drawn because nobody has given up on the two-state solution. We know full well that the Israelis are never going to implement the two-state solution, certainly not the present law, for many years to come. But they are committed to it under Oslo II. So nobody, to the best of my knowledge, nobody in authority has ever rejected the two-state solution. But what the Indian spokesperson did say, that they continued to refer to Hamas as a terrorist organization. So to that extent, they gave a certain protection to what the PM had said. To my mind, a very ill-advised remark that was made earlier. Because as you know today, serious scholarship does not use the word terrorism, only state order does. Most of us refer to these extremist acts as violent extremism. As you know, Hamas, as the other people in Palestinian occupied territories, are living under occupation. There is an international norm that sanctions opposition to occupation, to seeking freedom. So you can't call them terrorists. If you use the word terrorist, then you are supporting existing state order of tyranny against these people. That is what there is a concern. I don't think any of this has been seriously examined. I don't believe this is a reflection of any serious policy. I don't believe anyone in India is interested in this. I think that, and nobody abroad, with deep respect, I must say, and I say it with great anguish, nobody abroad is bothered about what is being said in New Delhi on this subject. New Delhi has moved on. It has abdicated all interest in the region. It is basically confining its overwhelming interest is domestic.
It's also
as far as the
commercial to a
region
certain
is
extent.
concerned, we are concerned only with economic ties
That's
pursued
right.
by our private sector.
Yeah. Which is why you have the I2U2 agreement with Israel. That was purely economic. It was not,
That was pushed by the Americans. You see,
Yeah.
there is another problem. The Americans are today irrelevant as far as the region is concerned. The region has moved on. All of them are pursuing foreign policy on their
Yeah.
own. They've shrugged off the American yoke. So after the Chinese, the Americans have been wanting to pretend that they matter. So this I2U2, it was already a kind of talk shop in place between UAE, UAE, India, and Israel. It was already there. The Americans muscled in and said, "Oh, we also want to be part of it." And
But
that is
Ambassador,
how it became I2U2. It is just an attractive abbreviation. It matters not at all. It has no
it's very
strategic value.
catchy. It's very catchy. But in 2014, when Israel and Hamas did clash, we blamed both of them. I mean, I don't think we've said, we even asked Israel to stop using disproportionate force, but that was in 2014. And if you remember, I mean, is there any move at all? Is there any sort of movement within India at all to reach out to the Palestinian Authority? I mean, the PLO's leader Yasser Arafat, when he was alive, he was I think there was a frequent visitor to Delhi, and one of his most famous photographs is the one where he hugged our Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. And
No,
I
but
know
you
for
see,
a fact,
you are India Prime Minister Prime Minister Modi visited Ramallah. Firstly, he invited Mahmoud Abbas 1 month before his visit to Netanyahu's visit. He's been to Ramallah. He has taken their highest medal, their decoration also. And also at the same time, he has offered development assistance to the Palestine Authority. So it is not as if India has snapped links with the Palestine Authority. We remain involved. But this is now part of a bureaucratized process. There is no serious political content in these engagements. But then I have argued, and I say that again, India is today overwhelmingly focused in terms of the attention of its leaders on domestic issues. Foreign policy is not a priority concern as far as I can see. We are not serious players in terms of what is happening in our neighborhood, which I regret, because I believe that the region in West Asia is very anxious to see an active Indian role. But we have disappointed them, and we've opened the space for the Chinese to come in. The agreement the Chinese brokered between Iran and Saudi Arabia, that is something we were well fit. We were capable of doing that, but we have never shown interest in the strategic aspects of the region. Indeed, we have not looked at the region as a collective identity even once. All our relationships with the region are bilateral and transactional, as I have said many times.
That's right. Mr. Alghoul, if I can come back to you, do you think it's right that that this collective punishment is being meted out to over 2 million Palestinian residents of the Gaza Strip? I mean, the Gaza guys have all been, sort of now are facing really the wrath of the Israelis. So do you think this Hamas attack has backfired a little bit? Because I mean, it may have set off an exodus by the settlers who were living along the Gaza border. But the primary purpose of the Hamas attack was what? What is the message they were sending out by calling it the Al-Aqsa flood?
I think Hamas. Again, I'm not speaking on behalf of Hamas, but I think that Hamas did a very well-studied, decisive attack on Israeli military posts and the settlements around Gaza Strip. Maybe the purpose for them is to show how weak this state, I'm talking about Israel and the occupation, and everybody claimed that Israel is one of the most strongest armies and intelligence in the world, and that attack showed that there is no intelligence within the Israeli intelligence agencies. The military was weak; they were escaping. So that's maybe the image that Hamas wanted to show the world. But again, I think Hamas knew from the beginning that this reaction or this atrocity is going to happen, because I'm sure they were expecting that the occupation in Israel will retaliate on that. So I'm sure everybody knows that. But I think, no, when you talk about how that's happened, like now today in West Bank, settlers killed a Palestinian. Yesterday in Qasra, a village around Nablus, a settler killed 2 Palestinians. The day before in the same town, a settler killed 4 Palestinians. So it is ongoing occupation. It is ongoing suffering of the Palestinian people. It's not about October 7th to 2023. It's about occupation lasting from 1948, and it's ongoing. It's ongoing process of trying to subordinate the Palestinian people, but it's not gonna work. I don't think it's gonna happen. Even that eviction of 1.1 million Palestinians is not gonna happen. It's not gonna help Israel restore its strong army image and intelligence. I think the Palestinian people have, as always have been the case,
Mr. Abdul,
paying the price for what's going on.
There was a story which appeared in one of the newspapers which said that the Egyptian general had warned Netanyahu about this Hamas attack that was going to come. He had warned him apparently 10 days before it happened. So should Netanyahu be, is there a larger conspiracy theory also that, Netanyahu is being set up, to be removed? Mr. Ambassador Ahmed can also come in on this after I hear from Alghoul. So what is it? Is there a plan to sideline Netanyahu, bring in a more moderate face that can actually, when actually have be more peaceful, a more sort of rightful relationship with the Palestinians, which doesn't involve this daily killing and so on and so forth?
Yeah. In this scenario, conspiracy scenario, I think so, because Netanyahu is an obstacle for Israel first, because of judicial reform package he had, the way that his cabinet has fascist, has terrorists like Ben Gvir, Smotrich, all these people, like even Glant, his defense minister, called us the Palestinian animals. Smotrich called to burn out Hawara village around Nablus. Ben Gvir says his life is more important than the Palestinian life. So that cabinet is very problematic for the Israel and the image of Israel. If you want to present the Israeli as the only democracy in the Middle East, and you have these people in your cabinet, it's not going to be helpful for you. So I think within that scenario, yes, Netanyahu should be out from the political picture of Israel. And I think the American have been worked toward this end, and they succeeded when they brought the previous cabinet with the Labid and I forgot the other guy name, but they succeed with that. But after the fifth round of election, after the coalition, which was weird coalition among the Israeli, because it had 8-9 parties from a different perspective, different background, so it couldn't last. So Netanyahu came back. So to end or to save Israel from the American perspective, Netanyahu should be out from the political picture of Israel.
That's very interesting. But you also feel that, Hamas has been tagged as a terror network. And there is this widening terror network which is knocking on Israel's doors. I mean, you have the Hezbollah in Lebanon, you have Islamic Jihad, so I don't know. Do you think that, that is also an issue which worries, people who are
I will not, me as a Palestinian, I will not call any of the militant in Palestine a terrorist group. That's for me, for sure. It's not a terror group because we are people under occupation. As Ambassador Ahmed said, under international law, we have the right to fight. We have the right to resist the occupation. So we are people under occupation, and we have all these rights within the international law. So I will not go there. Israel protected itself from what? It's already normalization its relation with the most of Arab countries, the surrounding Arab countries. Syria is a falling state, so there is no state to normalize with it. With Lebanon, even with Lebanon, they did the what they call it, the sea border. They did that an agreement between Israel and Lebanon. So that was like part of bigger picture of normalization, if I may say. But other than that, Israel protecting what? Israel is an occupation state trying to transfer the Palestinian people, trying to empty the Palestinian from their land, force them to move out of their land, and try to do their bigger Israel, or the state of Israel, the great
there's
state
a
of Israel.
5.5 million Palestinians. How can you just get rid of them? You
Uh,
can't.
you can, for sure. That's for sure. We are not going anywhere. We are there, and he have 1.2 or 1.3 million Palestinians living inside his state, so he cannot get rid of us. So it is very complicated issue for Netanyahu. But I think the international, especially the European and United States, are still interested in two-state solution, and that's why they, within the scenario suggested before, they try to end Netanyahu politically and keep that track of peace negotiation alive.
That's very interesting. Ambassador Ahmed, if I can bring you back in, do you think that the normalization of ties that Israel had with the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan, would that also be jeopardized? I mean, in the coming months, or do you think that will that's probably the ones that they will which will come in and sort of help bring in some peace and stability?
First, I must clarify the figures that I have got. The number of Palestinians, the number of non-Jews who live in Israel and in the occupied territories taken together, the non-Jews are in the majority.
Is
by
that
a
so?
million at least. The Jews are only
True.
6 million. If you take 3.7 million Palestinians in the West Bank, 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza, and about 2 million Israeli citizens, you have a majority. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to continue to pretend that there is a Jewish state and that these people don't matter? Now, with regard to normalization, this was an attempt, largely led by the Americans, an attempt to pretend that this number doesn't matter, that the Palestine issue doesn't matter, that their aspirations don't matter, and go to certain countries that were then persuaded or influenced to normalize. Each of them did it in their own set of circumstances. The UAE led in August 2020 because they have no strategic value. There are 1 million people in a country of 6 million. They are about 10 to 12% in their own country. My own Indian population is about 50%. So they have no strategic value. They were anxious to ingratiate themselves with the American government at that time, Donald Trump, and with the Israel lobby, and hoping that in case Netanyahu and Trump won, so be it. But even if they don't win, the Israel lobby will be happy with us. So it was a kind of political act as part of UAE wanting a larger profile in regional affairs, which is far beyond their size and their capacity. Bahrain came into the picture. You and I know Bahrain well. I think that it has got neither strategic nor any economic capacity. It's just a name. You are left with Morocco. Morocco bargained. They got the US to recognize Western Sahara as part of Morocco.
Yes.
Not a single other country in the world has done that. It's a meaningless recognition. The Moroccan public opinion totally opposes normalization. So what they have done is allowed a flight, but they don't have an embassy just yet. But certainly, they don't have an ambassador. What they are talking about is an Israeli or is the kind of Moroccan origin community coming back and forth, traveling. You are left with Sudan. Sudan is a very amusing scenario because the Americans promised them $1 billion in development assistance to promote the democratic process that ended as soon as the recognition occurred. I mean, it's an absurdity. And today, you know, Sudan is in the throes of a civil conflict. It's
That's
a
right.
meaningless initiative. The more serious initiative was with Saudi Arabia. I think
Yes.
it went quite far. And there were even reports. We don't know whether the three conditions the Saudis had put before the Americans. There were no conditions as far as Israel is concerned. There was no mention publicly, at least, about the Palestinian issue. The three conditions were with the Americans. And they were already controversial, and we don't know how far they would have gone. We don't know. But it appeared as if, on the basis of news reports, that they were progressing. My own sense is, I think that has been now indefinitely postponed.
Is that so?
And you have seen the Saudi statements earlier, as far as the Palestine issue was concerned, were rather low key. That has been corrected since then. The Foreign Office has made a tough statement. And then you have also Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has made a certain statement. But if you look at that issue, the normalization was the price Saudi Arabia was paying to obtain something from the American side. And what they were seeking was, number one, civilian nuclear capability.
That's right.
Number two, they were looking at the advanced armaments, weaponry.
Yeah.
And number three, a security guarantee. I think the security guarantee was the least significant. Nobody in the world believes that the Americans are in a position to give a security guarantee to anybody except Israel. They don't give a security guarantee because their administration changes. They can withdraw from any security guarantee they give is not worth the paper it's written on. So what were the Saudis seeking? The Saudis were seeking to enhance their capabilities with the help of these other two things, the advanced weaponry, as also with regard to the nuclear program, and then engage with the Iranians substantially over the longer period from a greater position of self-confidence. I believe that was the case.
So,
it had
so
nothing
there is,
to do,
so there's,
but the
so
price they thought that we should pay is that we will postpone our involvement with the Palestinian issue. I think the Hamas conflict, the Gaza conflict has ended even that.
That's right. That's right. So if I can go back to you, Mr. Alghoul. So the Arab countries' very lukewarm support for this two-state solution, obviously that has to change now. Do you think that Hamas, I mean, I wrote all these headlines in my head saying Hamas Harakiri or Hamas, the last, the stalemate. But do you think that, that will now have to change? Now, Egypt has mediated endlessly between Hamas and this thing. Is that going to happen again?
No, Hamas, like in 2017, if I'm not wrong, or 2014, they accepted the two-state solution. So they have their pragmatic position.
No, I'm talking about Israel. The Hamas may have accepted the two-state, but do you think that Egypt will be able to persuade the Israel government or the Israelis, to come back to the negotiating table? Not just Egypt. Do you think the US
negotiation table as a general, or a negotiation table with Hamas regarding the hostages?
Hamas hostages, of course, is one issue that I think will have to be sorted out right in the beginning. But looking forward, I mean, looking in towards a more a sort of a pragmatic solution to end this kind of this constant cycle of violence.
It will depend on the Hamas political level. They will decide. The Hamas militant, they will not decide any political issues from my concern, my understanding. So Hamas political level, they have to decide if they are gonna involve in any negotiation. I don't think that also, but that's also problematic in a way, because Hamas is a political group. They are not an political, like they are not the ruling.
It's a militia. It's a militia.
It's a militia. It's a political group. It's a guerrilla. Call it whatever. But they are not representing the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are represented by the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, and the Palestinian Authority, regardless what some people will think
Can we
about
just
that.
also look at the humanitarian issue, Mr. Alghoul? What is going to happen to these hundreds and thousands of people? Do you think there will be some kind of leeway given to them after Hamas has been sort of, has been attacked, or their headquarters have been attacked, their people have been attacked? Do you think the ordinary people will get some kind of, sort of leeway?
We have to ask the occupation, dear Neena, that the occupation will decide how stuff will goes on. Like occupation control the air, control the water, control the electricity, control everything, and they will decide if they want to like open humanitarian passage for support for those people who were forced to leave their homes in northern Gaza and southern Gaza, everywhere in Gaza, even the most secure place in Gaza, which is called the Rimal neighborhood, was destroyed, was leveled by Israeli bombardment. So that's up to the occupation power. That's not up to the neither Hamas, neither the people of Gaza.
So anyway, I'm running out of time. Do you want to give me a sort of an idea of what we can expect in the next couple of days or weeks? How long do you think this, is there going to be a ground assault? What do you think is going to happen?
I think there will be a ground assault from what the Israeli published, asking people to leave the northern part of Gaza Strip. They are trying to maybe find tunnels and also engage in a street wars with the Hamas militia, because our ordinary people will not involve in that like armed conflict. They will have to go with the military, so that might be an option. And I think the American gave the green light for Israel to do what is necessary. I think that's the next step. And I think that's this conflict, this what happened in Gaza, the aggression against our people in Gaza will last for a decently like a long time. Like it's not 1 day, 1 week. It's more than that.
And Ambassador Ahmed, if I can just end with you, can you just tell me whether you think there'll be a wider conflict? Because, I mean, they've already, Israel has already bombed Aleppo and Damascus. It's like a warning shot across the bows to Syria and Lebanon, saying they will not allow the Hezbollah to enter through the Quneitra Valley, the Valley of Tears, and all the other entry points. Do you think that there will not be a wider conflict?
I would be surprised if there is. I don't think the region wants a wider conflict. I don't think it will serve any useful purpose. From what I have seen so far, even Hezbollah has just indicated solidarity with Hamas, but it is not part of any major conflict. And I think that the attempt overall, I think there's a broad consensus in the region to manage the conflict within the occupied territories, within Israel and the occupied territories. I'm not sure it is going beyond this. Now, there is a lot of speculation as to whether the carnage in Gaza, which is considered imminent, where the scenes of large-scale death and destruction, whether that may encourage certain people to come in. And there is a lot of writing already happening as to whether Hezbollah would shower Israel with drones or missiles or rockets or what have you. And but there is no consensus in this. My own sense, as of now, is that Israel has yet to spell out its war aims. What they have said, this kind of statements in anger, that we will reduce Gaza to rubble, or we will, reduce Gaza to rubble and destroy, eliminate, exterminate, all of those statements. I'm not sure that they should be taken literally. What I think that Israel, Israel needs, its government desperately needs, is to have a sufficient kill ratio for every Israeli killed, a kill ratio, which is what they've had in the past, of about 1:10. Maybe now, maybe smaller or bigger, I don't know. But the kill ratio is crucial, number one. Number two, certain heads of certain assassins heads of certain Hamas leaders, which are, so that you can tell the Israeli people, I have avenged you. I am the great statesman. I am the great leader. I am the father figure, and I have avenged you. So I think this is what they are looking at. This is their war aim, to the best of my knowledge. At what state will they be able to draw that line? That look, declare victory. We don't know. We don't know that. But what I think as an observer, the blow that Hamas has already struck on Israel and the kind of the aura of invincibility that Israel has enjoyed for so long, I think that has gone. And what you really will now find overwhelmingly, regardless of the number of people killed in Gaza, which the Israelis have done with impunity over several years, is not something new. Every major Israeli operation has led to several hundred Palestinians being killed. It is not. This is an experience of the Palestinian people, and whether it is wives or children, it has never mattered to the Israeli forces. Today, I find the global media talking about children and women and hostages. This is the lived experience of the Palestinian people for 30 years.
That's right.
What are we talking about? So I don't know at what point the Israeli government will feel that we have reached our war aims and there should now be an end to that. The real problem will be what happens after. There will be soul searching, introspection, Netanyahu fighting for his life. All of those matters will come up. This is something Israel will need to address. And I have mentioned this before and I'll say it again now, that we are really hoping for that moment when large sections of the Israeli people realize that we have 6, 7, 8 million people, Palestinians living with us. At the end of the day, let us remember that both of us are children of Abraham. If you want an Abraham Accord, it is right there in front of you. Not the bogus agreements with UAE and Bahrain, etc. They have nothing to do with the prophet of the Old Testament. If you want to have an Abraham Accord, do it with the Palestinians, share a state with them, either give them a separate sovereign state or share one state with them in a democratic order. You will have the Abraham Accord right there.
So, as Israeli defense forces are preparing for a ground assault, it looks like, into Gaza, the whole memory, this is the very first time that we've had pictures of Israeli citizens being, butchered in this fashion and taken hostage. Is that something which is a kind of a shock to your system? The fact that something so inhuman could happen to your people at the hands of a group that a lot of people say was allowed to grow in Gaza, and take root in Gaza.
So I hope, Neena, it's not just a shock to Israelis who have witnessed this horrendous.
No, it's a shock to the whole world.
I hope it's a shock to the world. I hope it's a shock to the people of India who sadly know terrorism themselves, and this is a really barbaric terrorism. And I do think it's worth taking a step back, because we have to remember Gaza. 18 years ago, Israel pulled out every one of its soldiers, every one of its civilians, 8,000 civilians. We pulled out of our houses, our schools, even our cemeteries from there, in order to allow the Palestinians to have a future of their own. And there were no restrictions at the time. We left behind the greenhouses that we had so that there would be a basis for Palestinian agriculture. And sadly, instead of that, Hamas, which is a fanatical organization, read its charter. Its goal is the annihilation, not just of Israel, of the Jewish people. We're talking about the most extreme form of jihadi brutalism, actually took over Gaza, smashed those greenhouses. And since then, from the areas that we pulled out, has again and again been firing thousands of missiles. Now, in response to that, Israelis have tried to avoid the need to go into Gaza. We've worked very hard to develop technologies like the Iron Dome technology, which shoots Hamas missiles out of the sky. We've developed technologies to try and deal with the tunnels. But what we've seen now is that there is no feasible way that the people of Israel can live next door to a territory which has Iranian-sponsored terrorist headquarters, infrastructure embedded in the heart of it, and is still dedicated to our destruction.
So this freeing, now you have to free 150 hostages who have been taken. That itself is another Herculean task, isn't it? Who is going to reach out to a terrorist group and negotiate with them?
So first of all, regarding the hostages, we hope that the entire international community will work with us in demanding from Hamas that they be allowed Red Cross access, that they be treated humanely. And again, these are elderly women, Holocaust survivors, infants that were taken from their beds while others were being brutally murdered. We've seen, sadly, pictures of decapitated infants. It is hard to remember anything that equals the barbarity of which we've seen. So we're calling on the international community, but our goals have to go beyond that. We know that for 18 years, Hamas has been entrenching heavy-duty weapon factories, terrorist headquarters, and sadly, they do it in the bases of basements of hospitals. They do it in civilian areas. We are
But Master Taub, can I just say one thing? For 18 years, if you have known that it was happening, and there are cycles of violence with Hamas all the time, and this terror attack was, crossed all boundaries. Why is it that it has taken so long to tackle somebody like them? Why is it that it was not tackled head on? The fact is, everybody knows that they were supported by Iran. Everybody has.
So this is a question that we will be grappling with over the years after this conflict. But you will remember that that when we pulled out 18 years ago, the international community said, if you pull out of Gaza to the last inch, and we did more than they expected. We freed up the entire border with Egypt, what was called the Philadelphia route. We allowed free passage and so on. They said, we will support you. We will give you full legitimacy to do whatever is needed if ever this territory is used for attacks. But sadly, when these things happened, the cynical Hamas strategy of using civilians as shields, we like any Western country, we use our weapons to protect our civilians. The Hamas strategy is to use your civilians to protect your weapons. And their thinking is a sick way of thinking, in which if civilians are killed, this will give them some sort of perverse PR advantage. And what we've seen in the past is that the international community has said, you will have a window of legitimacy, but only so far. And we will support you, which is why we've worked so hard to come up with other measures, even though we knew that this was a ticking bomb. And unfortunately, this last week, we've seen that bomb go off in the most horrible of ways.
But is it also possible to say that Mohammed Deif, who's the head of Hamas, a shadowy leader that nobody has seen for years, was he capable of thinking strategically, in the sense that that he would was it Hamas Harakiri, or was it a move by Hamas to show the world that that the Palestinians were being sort of boxed in Gaza, but being edged out of the West Bank? That has been said by a lot of people.
So I think we need to be absolutely clear about what Hamas's goals are. I happened to hear, while I was online, the pre-record with one of your previous speakers, who said in a strange way, Hamas at some point has accepted the idea of a two-state solution, and that is absolutely not the case. Hamas has always and remains committed to the most extreme form of jihadist Jew hatred. Read their covenant, which is committed to the murder of Jews. Their calls now are to murder Jews all around the world, not just in Israel. So the notion that this is about this territory or that territory or this policy or that policy, it's simply not the case. We know
that's
that Hamas is thinking about what will happen in the Palestinian territories in the era after President Abbas. So it's obviously positioning itself. We know that it is sponsored by Iran, which funds it, which trains it, which provides it with weaponry, which obviously is fearful of the growing peace between Israel and its Arab neighbors. You know, the fact is we have peace with Gulf states, we have growing relations with Saudi Arabia. And one of the things that cements that relationship is all of those countries of the region realize what a dangerous extremist force of evil Iran is. And you know, Iran, and so all of us have to find a way of working together. You know, ultimately there needs to be peace between Israelis and Palestinians and further afield. But
So-
allowing this Hamas infrastructure to remain in Gaza is not bringing that peace closer. It's making it go much further away.
What would the solution be to tackling Hamas? I mean, it's not
Well,
going to go away. I mean, even if you kill, the top rung, there is another rung and another rung. So, how are you going to handle Gaza?
Neena, you know, and I don't need to tell the people of India what a long and complicated struggle the fight against terrorism is.
Yes. Yeah.
But the first step has to be taking away from Hamas the terrorist capabilities that it has at the moment. That is going to be a long, a complicated struggle, but it's one where we really need the support of the free world, of the international community, to make sure that once and for all it's done.
But the Palestinians who live in the Gaza Strip live in terrible conditions. I mean, they live as both my guests, earlier guests who were on the show said. They said it's like an open air prison. Shouldn't the lives of the Gazans then? Shouldn't Israel ensure?
Thank you for asking that, because there's something here that needs to be made clear. When Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip,
I heard you on that.
No.
I'm saying now.
The point that I'm making here is, I think some of your speakers have things the wrong way round. It is not that these restrictions that we now have on Gaza are the cause of terrorism. It is that terrorism was the cause of these restrictions. It was because we saw that, we used to have an airport in Gaza. I was involved in the negotiations over a port in Gaza. We had free access to Egypt. We had work visas for people to come into Israel. And the reason we had to stop those things was because every element of free movement and access was abused by the terrorists. And we know that's a tragedy for the people of Gaza. But look at the previous rounds of fighting. Hamas missiles have been fired not only at the people of Israel, they've been fired at the crossing points to stop aid coming into Gaza, because Hamas has an interest in the perpetuation of the misery of the people of Gaza.
That's
when we are
interesting.
fighting to remove Hamas, we are not just fighting, first and foremost, we're fighting to protect the lives of our people in the villages, not just around Gaza, but further afield. But we're also fighting to free the people of Gaza from the rule of Hamas. That is, they are suffering in many ways no less than we are.
What do you think is going to happen next? I mean, in the sense you have reached Anthony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, has arrived there. So has Lloyd Austin, the Defense Secretary. They've reached out to Mahmoud Abbas. And they've obviously, the Netanyahu government has been reconstituted to tackle this war. What's next? I mean, apart from obliterating Hamas, what can we expect to see?
So I think what we are going to see over the next coming weeks, first of all, Israel regaining control and securing its south, protecting those civilians, rebuilding the border fence, and doing whatever is necessary to ensure that Hamas within Gaza doesn't have that terrorist capability. At the same time, we need to keep our eyes on the north of Israel. Hamas is only one of Iran's proxies in our region. We have Hezbollah, which in many ways is a better funded, better trained, more extensively armed militia, army almost, terrorist army in South Lebanon, another proxy for Hamas. And we need to do everything we can to ensure that Hezbollah doesn't enter this, because for Israel, it's fighting a war on two fronts, but it would be ultimately an absolute tragedy for the people of Lebanon that Hezbollah has entrenched itself amongst. So I think we need to do everything we can to try and protect that. And I think if we're successful in removing this horrendous tyranny from the people of Gaza, we will be in a better place to look forward and think about ways in which we can cooperate. There are so many, it's going to be a long process. I mean, the
Ambassador, is the two-state solution off the table completely? I mean, in the sense, Mr. Netanyahu has not done anything about it. I mean, 10 years now since the last talks, and you were involved with the talks as well. So, I mean, what do you see happening? Should the Palestinians be given a homeland?
The question isn't whether the Palestinians should have a state. The question is, what kind of state would it be if they were given it? And at the moment, what Israelis see, that every piece of territory that we have pulled out of, with all of the hopes that it would turn into a prosperous neighbor, has actually turned into a launching pad for horrendous acts of terrorism against Israel. And if that is the situation, you can understand that it's very hard to come to the people of Israel and say, on the basis of that record, you should be withdrawing from further territory. We really need to see a partner that cares more about ensuring the future of its own kids rather than destroying the future of our kids in order to be able to reach out. I want to remind you.
No, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. Yeah.
I want to remind you, we had, 50 years ago, we had a very bloody, difficult war against Egypt.
The Yom Kippur War.
And the Yom Kippur War, also on a holy day. This was 1973. But then President Sadat, the president of Egypt, did something remarkable. He said no more war. He came to the Knesset in Jerusalem and he held out his hand in peace. And in a few years, we had a peace with Egypt that has lasted till today. King Hussein of Jordan was somebody who similarly expressed that kind of statesmanship. And that peace has also lasted. And we are waiting for the Palestinian Sadat. We are waiting for the Palestinian Hussein. We are waiting for the leader who puts the future of his people before destroying the future of our people.
That's a very, very forward-looking statement, very positive statement. Thank you, Ambassador. Would you like to just give us a picture of a concluding sort of words on how the horrific Hamas attack has sort of, I mean, I feel they've committed Harakiri, but there are a lot of people who say it's also brought the world's attention back to and put pressure back on Israel.
So
what would you see?
I don't want to describe the atrocities. I have boys who are unfortunately in the army, who have been called up, or on the fronts, who are seeing things that I hope nobody ever has to see. But I think this is a moment of moral clarity. It's a moment where we are seeing, in a way that I think many haven't seen it before, the difference between light and darkness.
Yes.
The difference between decency and evil. And that doesn't mean that Israel always gets it right. We're facing horrendous dilemmas in the way that we fight. But at the end of the day, there is no parity, there is no equality between one side, Israel, for whom every civilian casualty, whether it's Israeli or whether it's Palestinian, is a tragedy, and Hamas and Islamic Jihad, for whom, in their perverse way of thinking, every civilian casualty, whether it's Israeli or even whether it's Palestinian, is some kind of sick success. And we need to keep that moral clarity in mind.
That's beautifully put. Thank you very much. I think on that note, we will have to end this. Thank you very much for being part of the show. Click on the Global Express on the New Indian Express website to watch the show.